Like, Austria I want to have as a European-facing nation. Same thing with Naples. Like, the big difference between Naples and Aragon is Naples is inward-looking and Aragon is far more colonial in outlook. For the countries here, the objective to become the emperor would an alternative goal be to get empire government rank? No, because that would be get 1,000 development. And for a nation like Trier to do that, that's a bit much. The whole point of the empire HRE thing is it's diplomatic. Like, you can wrangle your way to becoming the emperor by good diplomacy, which is now no longer possible, and I'd still kind of like to do that. Like, I really did like the objective of the HRE miners to keep as many princes in the HRE as possible. So I might see if I can work out a way of saying keep as many independent states in the area as possible. I mean, it'd be really hard to judge, that's the problem. Austria only have vassals, Venice and Milan. Don't want to do that because Venice is a player nation. Although there are already reasons for conflict between the two. For example... Oh, no. Venice needs to have trade value in Venice, double that of Genoa. That's one of my favourite ones. There's going to be some massive trade wars between these two, I suspect. Keep X nations in the German region. Ah, now that would be a way of doing it. Yeah, in the North German and South German region. I like that. Just making a note to myself. Will Poland form the Commonwealth? I don't know. That's up to Poland. Anyway, while there's a bit of a lull going on here, let's go and talk about... We just did Denmark. Let's go and talk about England. So, England needs to own Malta, Gibraltar, and Bermuda. So they need to own Malta down here, Gibraltar here, and Bermuda over here. Those are fairly famous British naval ports, basically. Allows them to project their power. They need to have a colonial nation in 5 different colonial regions. So whereas Castile needs to have 3 big colonial nations, having at least 20 provinces in each, England just needs to have 5 colonial nations in different regions. They need to own an area in India and an area in China, so any area. So again, this is a geographic map mode, so any of these areas, so it could be like Mysore, it could be Berar, it could be West Bengal, it could be Patan, any full region in India and any full region in China. The Chinese one's going to be difficult because that would mean fighting Ming. They need to establish a pirate republic. This one's going to be interesting because it basically forces them to go for the Caribbean early, because the only pirate republics that Britain can... Oh no, that's not true. They could also get Madagascar. But basically, if they have certain requirements in place in certain provinces in the Caribbean, they can spawn pirate republics over here. So you can get Port Royal, Tortuga, or New Providence. They could potentially spawn sail in Morocco, though I don't think that's something that they themselves can do. Or they can get Libertalia in Madagascar. But I did like that one, because forming a pirate republic was a lot of fun. And then they need to have 1,000 ships. So I've tried, where possible, not to do things which are numeric. The ships I thought was an exception, because if you want to stop England getting to 1,000 ships, you declare war on England and you sink those ships. It's counterable. Like, the thing with a lot of these goals is they have to be counterable by other players. So one of my early goals for Brandenburg, for example, was get 135 discipline and 50 infantry combat ability. That's a cool goal for Brandenburg to achieve, but no other players can stop them doing that. You can't prevent them from taking certain ideas. So those goals were changed, but the ones for, like, have 1,000 ships, yeah, you can counter that and you sink their ships. What I was trying to say is that vassals technically probably can win, but realistically probably not, because to be strong enough to win means you could probably be far too disloyal to remain a vassal. I especially don't see any player that strong staying as a vassal. No, I don't either. And in fact, I have a feeling that Scotland is going to become a massive thorn in England's side, which is one of the reasons I suspect that Castile released Naples, and why Burgundy didn't complain too heavily about releasing Holland. Like, generally having player vassals, from what we've seen in experience, is a really bad idea, because they will do everything in their power to usurp you. Is Taiwan a region in China by definition? I think so. Because if we go to this, and then areas, no, regions, South China, yeah. Hainan and Taiwan are both regions. So the regions would be Western India, Deccan, Coromandel, Bengal, or South China, North China. That's why you eat them in 10 years. I mean, the other thing that you have to worry about with vassals is people supporting their independence, which is another potential problem. Kelsia, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the channel. And I have to say, it's really good seeing so many of you watching this today. I'm really happy with that. These Community Clash multiplayers tend to be a pretty good show. And I think this one especially, because there are so many conflicts between so many different players. Including some conflicts you just don't expect, like the bloody HRE being dissolved already. Ah, damn you, that guy. But I have other ways of fixing things up. And I'm pretty sure that we're still going to be seeing a lot of player wars, even without the Protestant League War being a thing. Although that would have been really interesting, because a lot of people had a stake in that. A lot of people wanted the Protestants to win, a lot of people wanted the Catholics to win, and then several of the outlier nations, like the Ottomans, wanted to enforce the Treaty of Westphalia. Yeah, the League War would have been glorious. That's the thing I miss the most. Like, the HRE itself isn't the most interesting mechanic. The League War, however, is great. I love the way that they've done the League War. Could have Cologne and Trier have a goal to release the French miners? I mean, Cologne and Trier are both bisphorics, so I might see if they can do some more religious-y stuff with that. How did the HRE disband? That guy playing as Brandenburg, one of his goals is to see the HRE disband, and he allied all the other electors. Like, the way you do it is by allying or occupying their capitals. So he allied all the other electors, and then had Poland, his ally, occupy Vienna, because he wasn't allied with Austria, and that allowed him to disband. And immediately afterwards, for some reason, all of his allies left. He's still got his alliance with... Oh, no, it's not a player war, it's just Hungary. Why is Hungary in this? Because Brandenburg's fighting against the Teutons. That would be why, and the Teutons are allied with Hungary. That's fine. Hungary is a protected nation, that's why I had to be careful there. His nickname is actually that guy. Or that guy. See? So that is actually a fairly large player war. But anyway, what I was trying to say is that somehow they have managed to keep their alliance with Bohemia. Probably because Brandenburg and Bohemia both have pro-Protestant goals, while Austria is more neutral, and several of the Western Germanic powers are definitely pro-Catholic. And that is something I'm still going to be trying to initiate. The Reformation is still one of the best opportunities for conflict in Europe at this time, and I feel like in a lot of multiplayers, when you choose to go one faith or the other, it doesn't really matter. It's mostly about the modifiers you can get. Now it matters. Now you have goals tied to those, and you want to see players converting to one faith or the other because of your goals, and you want to try and manipulate that if you can. Marcus, don't be in Twitch, just join. Ask in chat from the other people, because it's unfair if you can see the armies and everything from all the other players. Own X Centers of Reformation. Oh, no! I crashed. Oh, man. That's annoying. And thanks for the bits, Fishy. I appreciate that. Some bits for the Viking. Thank you.
So, Mordred, you
Hello.
just disconnected.
Yeah, I just crashed.
You want to do a rehost since you're down? Because
Marcus
several
is
people.
about to come in as well.
And Blue Kiwi's out too. So instead of doing 3 hot joins, just do a rehost.
Yeah, may as well. Seems like a reasonable thing. Send the crash report. May I watch now as I'm no longer part of the multiplayer game as it stands. Not playing at all until next week as a different out of European nation. Yeah, that's fine, Faceless. Although, well, I'm not sure that I agree that Scotland is out. Do we think that Scotland is dead? Because I don't think it is. It's taken a massive blow, but you can still do some diplomacy to get back in. There's going to be a lot of people who want to see the downfall of England. That guy is the biggest plotter in Discord. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Hey.
Hello.
Bye.
Okay, that was slightly random. Anyway, while this is loading up, we can talk about some of the other nations. So we have covered England. Let's take a look at Florence. So Florence needs to have a province with 100 development. Florence has a lot of development modifiers, and they are definitely like the kings of playing Tool, them or Milan. So Florence needs to have a province with 100 development. And I don't think that's actually going to be the difficulty. The difficulty is going to be holding it. Because as soon as you get a province of more than like 50 or 60 development, it becomes a massive target because other people want to take it. It's just one territory. Relatively easy to take in a war. So they're going to need to be very, very careful when it comes to their alliances and things in order to maintain control of that one province. Then Florence also need to become a great power. Fairly self-explanatory. They need to become one of the top 8. They need to have 20 universities. So this is one of the rare instances where I've done one of these numerical things, because that's going to be very difficult to track, because you literally have to go to the map and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it basically also means just controlling 20 provinces, but it's just so flavorful for Florence. Florence is all about the culture and the prestige and having big libraries and stuff like that. So I thought it made a lot of sense. It's easier to track than, say, get 2 technologies ahead or gain a certain amount of innovativeness. Several nations did have innovativeness as a goal.
And server is back up more.
Cool, thank you. Innovative is really difficult to have as a goal because nobody else can contest it. And if you become Anglican, for example, then you get 50% increased innovativeness. So it's too easy to manipulate yourself. Let's go back to multiplayer. And then join game. And then super secret password. Okay, so once they have got, or one of their other goals is to have a higher income than Venice or Genoa. So Florence was renowned for just being stupendously wealthy, but they did it through a bit of trade. I mean, Florence is a trade node, as is Pisa, but also just by having fabulously wealthy territories. And because they are building so seriously tall through their 100 development province, they need to try and become wealthier than Venice and Genoa. And they can, of course, do that by seeing to the downfall of Venice and or Genoa. Well, actually, both of them. It's both. And then finally, Austria must... Oh, okay. This was actually one of their open ones. Austria must not have any ports in the Adriatic. This can be lost if they do take a port again. So most of these goals are ticked off once you've achieved that. So, for example... That's actually a really bad example. Have 1,000 development for Brandenburg. As soon as you've hit 1,000 developments ticked off, you have succeeded in getting 1,000 development. Well, some of them can be lost, and I do stipulate in the goal itself if it can be lost, and that's one of them. So if Austria does manage to get a coastline again in the Adriatic somewhere, then that goal is no longer considered achieved. So those are the Florentine ones. And while the game is still loading, let's talk about France. France needs to have a Canadian colony of at least 20 cities, and the Hochelaga province itself, which is Quebec, must have 20 development. So France is all about building up a massive Canadian colony, which should also be fairly well developed. They need to own either London or Madrid. So the Franco-English alliance is again one of those kind of weird ones. You know it's not going to last because it's in France's interest to go after London or Madrid. And we've already seen the rivalry between the Iberians and the French, so they probably go after that. It is an either or, so they don't necessarily have to go after London if they've taken Madrid. They need to own 2 of the following areas: Central Italy, Lazio Campania, Apulia, or Calabria. Basically, it's the southern territories, most of them in the Naples area. So historically, France fought a lot of wars over Italy, and this is basically referencing and encouraging that type of play. They need to ensure that, and again, this is another reason for a conflict between France and England. England, or Great Britain, or Scotland, must have 0 heavy ships. So they need to make sure that England loses all of their heavy ships. And then they need to occupy Berlin, Vienna, and Moscow at the same time. Allied occupation does count so long as you're in the same war. So this is basically trying to do what Napoleon couldn't. Berlin, Moscow, and Vienna occupied, not owned, just occupied at the same time, or by allies. So I am hoping to see some pretty high-end wars between France and the Germanic states, and then eventually France and Russia. I am kind of expecting Russia to grow because Russia doesn't have that many counters in the area, with the possible exception of Poland and possibly Denmark. Scotland is very much alive. Yeah, I do kind of agree. Scotland is alive. Scotland just needs to choose their allies a little bit better. They're all going to be gone when the Emperor passes the Lost Reform. No HRE. HRE is dead. See you, fishy. I mean, who else would you join as? Novgorod, I think, is already as good as dead. It's too late for them. You could be Milan, you could be Sweden, you could be Norway, you could be Lithuania. Sweden might be a good choice. And that would also give us another rival in the area for Russia. In fact, let's do that. I think I'm going to put you into Sweden next time. Because, yeah, Scotland's a difficult position. I mean, when I was designing this goal situation, I would have countries like Castile or Aragon. I was not expecting to have them both played. It was countries like England or Scotland. And you kind of broke that, actually, Faceless, because you insisted on Scotland. So I'm going to accept. Scotland's dead. I'll place you in Sweden next time instead. Morocco could be another one. No, I want a Sweden player. We need northern power. So I'm going to put Faceless as Sweden next time, and I'll come up with some goals between sessions. Is Novgorod still alive? No, I think they've already lost Novgorod. Yeah, they have. They've lost too much. Like, they have to keep this coast early on because they're a merchant republic and they rely on trade, especially in the Baltic. And they need to own Novgorod. Otherwise, it's a bust. Anyway, while we are waiting for nations to load in, let's move on to the next one. So we just covered France. Genoa! So Genoa needs to have a trade value in the Genoa node double that of Venice. Just like Venice needs a trade value in the... Or they need to have double the trade value in Venice compared to that of Genoa. They need to have 20,000 ducats in the treasury. So Genoa is all about the money, and they are basically playing a giant bank. The entire Genoese playstyle in this is you are the Bank of Europe. So you need to have 20,000 ducats in the bank, and once you've reached that, you can spend it. No, it's not something you need to maintain, because banks don't keep that big a treasury, hence they go bust. They need to win a trade league war, or a trade conflict against Venice, or whoever is the largest trade power in the Venice node, if they've been destroyed, and then demand trade power as a part of the peace deal. So they need to have a trade war at some point against Venice and demand trade power as part of that peace deal. Which, if they declare the war themselves, then they are going to risk Venice calling in a bunch of friends, and if they do themselves call in a bunch of friends, then they need to be, or their friends need to be okay with the fact that they're demanding a trade power in that peace deal, because it's not the best peace deal that you can make, but against a trade power it's going to be ruinous. And then any of Venice's friends and people that rely on Venice for cash, like France, is going to have a vested interest in making sure that Venice doesn't fall in that war. They need to concurrently loan 5,000 ducats to other nations using the actual loan interface. So this is something I've never done. I've never seen done in a multiplayer game, because players tend to just give gifts if they want to loan out money. But no, Genoa actually needs to do this as a proper business transaction, as a loaned thing. They have to loan out 5,000 ducats and earn at least 1% interest as part of the deal. So they can't just use the loaning system as a gifting thing and have a 0% interest. No, 1% minimum. And then they need to have at least 12 merchants. And to get merchants, you need to either have trade companies, or you need to have colonial nations, which is basically forcing Genoa to go down either of those paths. So we are going to see a colonial Genoa in some kind, because if you take the trade ideas and plutocracy, I think the maximum you can get to, I think, is 8. So to get to the 12, you have to go colonial. So that is Genoa. Thank you, Mordred. I think I'm just too much of an inflated head for my own good. I was playing completely against my nature and broke me and my spirit in that part. Scotland's hard. I mean, it was always going to be a difficult one in England, which is why I said either or, England or Scotland, but you insisted. Hey, Vabis.